Hey guys, Anthony Morganti here. Yes, after a 2 week hiatus, I am back to doing photo critiques. Today we're going to take a look at the work of Bastiaan Oosterveld. Okay, right at the top, let me apologize to Bastiaan. I am sure I'm mispronouncing your name. I apologize for that. For everyone else, Bastiaan sent me in 10 images. I believe 3 of them were shot with a Nikon Z6 and the rest of them with a Nikon D3500. I also want to remind you that in the top left-hand corner, I'll have the exposure information and the lens and focal length that Bastiaan used for each of the images, so you could check that out. Now, this first image is wonderful. I'm kind of partial to dogs and cats, as many of you know. And this is a great shot. It's really a nice portrait of the dog. I really love the shallow depth of field. You could see that he shot at f3.2, so it really makes the dog stand out. One thing, though, if I zoom in, you could see there is a considerable amount of noise, and it was shot at ISO 200. So shooting at such a low ISO and still having that much noise, that usually happens because the image was underexposed. And then in post-production, Bastiaan probably had to go over to the basic tab and push exposure up quite a bit. So, it happens. Sometimes we just don't nail exposure. But usually when you shoot wildlife or pets, animals in general, you don't want a lot of noise. There are, of course, creative situations where you want noise. There may be a creative reason, a creative type of project you're working on, where you may even want to go to Effects tab and you want to add grain to an image. But usually when you're shooting animals, even pets, you don't want a lot of noise. So if he didn't nail exposure, it's not the end of the world. There are a lot of high-end noise reduction software applications out there that would take care of this. Topaz Denoise AI and On One No Noise AI and Pure Raw by DxO. All of those are really good applications for removing noise on these types of images. Overall, though, just the composition and the focal length, or I'm sorry, the aperture that it was shot at f3.2 was perfect. It's just that noise that's bothering me a bit. This next image is great. This is probably my favorite image of the bunch. It was shot, as you could see, at f1.8, so there's very shallow depth of field, and you could see how the background's just totally blurred. All of our attention, or most of our attention, is on the face of the cat. Even the cat's nose is out of focus because it's such a wide open aperture. But that's good because we as humans will look at what is the sharpest part of the image. And in this case, it's the cat's eyes. And really, the cat's eyes are this image. That's where the photographer wants us to look, at the cat's eyes. So it's really a great image. One thing I could suggest, though, another thing as humans, when we look at an image, we tend to look at the brightest areas, or our eyes will keep getting drawn to the brighter areas. And because the sky is back there and it's so bright, and then relatively speaking, the cat's face is very dark. Not very dark, but it's darker. We'll tend to look off the cat's face to the sky. So what I would suggest you do is take a brush, and this is a trick that many photographers do, not only for cat portraits, but for human portraits as well. Just take a brush, push exposure up a little bit, and paint, just brighten up the face of the cat. Let me do this real quick. Okay, just something like that. Now there's before and there's after. That might be a little bright. You just want it to kind of compete with the sky a little more because the sky is so bright. So there's before and there's after. And I think that will help the viewer, when they look at the image, dwell on the cat's eyes a little longer than going up to that sky. This is a great shot too. I really like the expressions. I just, in threes, remember I talked about this in the past. When you do photographs, and you're photographing animals, subjects, objects, it doesn't matter. Odd numbers usually come out more appealing in an image than even numbers. So one is better than two, three is better than two, and so on. And here we have the three alpacas, these alpacas. Somebody let me know in the comments below. But anyway, we have the three alpacas, I'll call them for this sake of this. I also like the sky. I also like, again, the focal length, the aperture shot at f/2.2. It just gives you enough depth of field where the center one is in focus. Even the one in the back is in focus. This one's slightly out of focus, but that's okay because that's off to the side. And everything else is blurred enough where it's really making the animals pop. So I like this image a lot. Really well done. It's a really interesting composition. Here we have framing, of course, where we have the cow up above, and then we have probably the calf, right, with suckling. Below, we have this barbed wire fence in there. So we have this, framing done, also the side lighting, and it just is a kind of an interesting composition, and it's well done. It's well done. And this one I like too. I've mentioned in the past, when you're photographing wildlife in general, animals in general, you want to try to get a different expression, meaning if you just take a photograph of a bird in a tree, it's a bird in a tree. But if you have the bird singing, at least it's doing something, and it adds some more interest to the image. In this case, this groundhog, what is this? Let me know in the comments below. In this case, for the sake of this video, I'll call it a groundhog. It's has its eyes closed. Of course, it's eating, but it has its eyes closed. So I think that's really just a nice capture. Now, when I first looked at the image, I was thinking maybe to crop out the one in the background that is blurry, but it does kind of add some flow to the image because you got kind of the hill going up, and it could be fine this way. You may want to consider cropping it and maybe cropping it into more of a vertical, something like that. That, on its own works as well. It's really 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. They both, I think, would work. There is, it's still ISO 200. There's still some kind of noise in there. You still might want to consider a higher end app to get rid of some of the noise, especially with the wildlife shots. This is a pretty interesting study. We have this gourd over here, and we have a lizard over here, and it's just kind of cool. I like it. I think it's well done. Very nice composition. Moving on. Okay, this is kind of cool. We got, the sun rays, the trees. I said this before in a lot of images. This is a beautiful shot, right? Beautiful study of black and white, a lot of nice gray tones, but it's kind of the backdrop for something else. Like when someone looks at this, they look at it and they'll say, yeah, that's appealing, but there's nowhere really for their eyes to dwell upon. You kind of just look, yeah, it's nice. It needs something else. It needs something else in here. Obviously, you don't always get presented with the perfect situation where you walk up on this and there's a bear here or a person here or a dog even. I often say, as I say, you guys are getting tired of hearing it. It needs a three-legged dog. Because I say three-legged dog because it's unusual and it's something that people will look at. The more unusual something is in a certain scene or situation, the more compelling the image will be. So if you had a three-legged dog in a scene, in just about any scene, it's different. It's something you don't often see. So again, you don't always get presented with those situations. Bastiaan could have been out on a walk and there was absolutely nothing, no one around him, no animals around him, nothing. But this is just beautiful light. So that's what he captured. Very well done, though. This selective color, flags are the perfect subject for selective color. So in this, again, very well done, very nicely done. And here's another one similar to that image, the black and white study of the trees and the sun. this is another one. It's kind of the backdrop for something else. It's beautifully done. It's well done. We do have the jet up in the sky, kind of adds a little bit of visual interest, something different. We have all in nature, and then we have some man-made thing up in here, which kind of gives you a little bit of a contrast, but it still needs something else in the image to just push it over the top. But technically, it's very well done, just like that black and white study of the trees and the sun. And this is a great image. I love this one too. Again, f a 3.2, shallow depth of field. So it really, I often say our monkey brain, the way our brains work when we look at something, we don't like to look at blurry things as humans. So if something is blurry, we're going to look off it at something that is more in focus or something that is sharper. So this is perfect for that because the little boy, the young man, is perfectly in focus. And then everything else is just blurred enough where you could see what's going on. You understand the situation, but it is blurred enough where it makes us not want to look at it. We prefer to look at him. And this is what the photographer Bastiaan wants us to look at. And this is what I talk about is the mental space, where the photographer can control the mental space of the viewer with a lot of times light or with composition, or in this case, focus and depth of focus, depth of field. This allows Bastiaan to subtly tell us, the viewer, he wants us to look right here, and it's really well done. And overall, this is a really strong portfolio. Bastiaan, thank you for sharing it with us. I really do appreciate it. And again, I apologize I mispronounced your name. And I'd like to thank everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.